Yo, what's going on, guys? Schmeck here. Just yesterday, we got the Season 8 update, which should be coming pretty soon here on the 13th of next month. And I kind of wanted to give some of my unfiltered thoughts and first looks at the updates that we saw. So, if you guys watched my stream the other day, we did everything live. But now that we've had a day or two to look over things, I kind of wanted to give an additional review of what we've seen, what we should be expecting, and if there's anything to look forward to. So let's just get right into it. For the very beginning, we're only going to be looking at next Season 8, and we'll kind of stay out of the development and exploration right now. So here were a lot of the notes that we took. So we took these live on stream when we were actually watching the update, and we can kind of go over some of them now. So first thing, here we'll zoom in a little bit. Obviously we have Coral Divide. Here, I'll just delete this. Map is cool. It's nice that it'll be in the rotation. We've wanted a new map for over 3 years, so it's cool that we finally got one. Seems like we have some new seasonal events that'll be coming. So I know there's going to be something in summertime with Bloom events, probably Wisps, and then we're probably also going to see something with the Spriggan. So they said that we have better rewards, and they'll be scaling up to 725. So in the past, we've seen patterns, chromatic seals. So, you know, obviously we're kind of been getting these every year, so this really shouldn't be a surprise at this point, but I guess for PC players, this will be the 4th, maybe 5th year that you guys have seen this stuff. For console players, it'll be your 1st year, so, you know, it's not really anything special, but you should be able to get some good rewards out of it. The Expeditions Unleashed, which we saw a little bit of. I'm not too happy with this, because it kind of feels like we're going to be... Here's some, like, images, you know, and I'll just play it here. Because it kind of seems like they're just taking pre-existing content that's already in the game and then recycling it, putting it in open world, and then calling it something new. All of these boss fights are fights we've already seen. They've been in the game before, right? So... if you want, you can experience these same exact boss fights, which will obviously be at a much more intimate scale as a 5-man comp in mutations or just normal expeditions. And now they're just adding into a Zerg Fest. So I don't really think these are going to be like that cool. It'll be something to do every day so that you guys can easily get 725 gear. Obviously, we don't know what perk pools are going to be with that 725 gear yet. Could be really good. Could be awful. You know, we don't know. We've gotten 725 gear in the past, but you know, with random perks that aren't that good, so we'll just have to wait and see. So yeah, I mean, like, again, you know, we've seen all these bosses before. They're already in the game. The main reason that I said I was a little disappointed in this was, A, it's kind of a Zerg Fest, so it's not very intimate. You're going to be missing a lot of the boss mechanics that you otherwise would be seeing in smaller scale combat. But on top of that, if we're taking out expedition bosses and putting them in open world, to me that kind of makes me think that expeditions are going to be forgotten about as far as how the developers focus their time. So hopefully that's not the case, because you guys know I'm all about the expeditions here, but if it is, that's kind of sad to see. So again, big things with Expeditions Unleashed: better rewards, you have chance at 725 items. So, of course, this is something that you should be doing, because you never know, maybe you'll get something bis. We heard of something called a Faction Fest. This is another thing, which is a community event. And it seems like the developers wanted to have something with the faction-related community event, where if you participate in expeditions specifically, you'll get rewards. Again, we don't know what those rewards are. We'll probably have to wait to hear more about this. I guess we'll just see what it is, right? Now, one of the larger things from their little update video was the Seasonal World 2 Hardcore. We'll sip the black tea. If you know, you know. And all we know as of right now is it's currently being labeled as a hardcore server, but the dev said it's going to be their take on what hardcore is. So while there's incentives not to die, and it looks like you'll be getting very specific rewards if you're able to do the hardest endgame content without dying. We don't know what those rewards will be, whether they're cosmetic, whether they're in-game rewards that your main character on a different server will be able to obtain. We're not sure of yet. But it seems like they specifically labeled expeditions, M3s, worm, and Hivagorgons as specific content where if you're able to complete it, you'll get unique rewards. So again, we're going to need to see what that looks like. The devs also mentioned that the leveling and MSQ is going to be very streamlined. Obviously, we're not 100% sure what this entire process is going to look like yet. We also do not know if we're just going to have access to all the artifacts. Like, do we need chromatic seals and coconuts to level those to 725? Like, there's a lot we just don't know about yet. So hopefully, we figure out more soon. The big things that we do know is that it's going to last approximately 4 to 6 weeks, and it's going to be coming in the middle of the season about. So we're not going to have access to the Unfallen server right away. You also should be able to get specific materia that you can use to craft PvP artifacts on your main account, which is kind of interesting. I don't mind that. At least it's a reward, and obviously some PvP artifacts are really hard to get, right? Looking at you, Nimblecoat and Serenity, those are the big ones people want, right? So if people have the incentive to actually acquire those without doing any PvP, there's arguably good and bad thoughts there, but at the end of the day, it's still an incentive, right? People are going to want to do it to get what they can use. The big thing, and then I said, we kind of mentioned this, there's no limit on artifacts you can equip. So this is kind of unique, could be fun. There could be a lot of broken builds to mess around with. Kind of cool though, The big things that I think are that, obviously, I have very limited amount of content here. This is not going to be something that is going to take up the entire season's worth of time, right? It's going to be something short. So, while there are small reasons as to why you might want to, upgrade a character, level it up here, see what you can get, it's definitely not going to be a, 20-plus hour experience, I'd say. So we're kind of unsure what it's going to look like at this time, but my only real take is that I still do not believe that the developers should be investing time into anything seasonal, and I think that we should be focusing on bringing existing content up to par so that it's back into the game synergy and it's meaningful and you have players that want to explore the world, and we should really be creating a better endgame progression loop as well as adding content. So it seems weird to me that these small seasonal servers are being focused when there's just so much more that could be added to the game at this point in its life cycle. So this is just my final thoughts here. I just think it's kind of a waste of resources, even though it sounds kind of cool. The only other thing I have to add to this is that if you guys are familiar with World of Warcraft, there was a really neat server idea called OnlyFangs, and what they did is they had a bunch of people, did hardcore, set specific goals for themselves. So, sip the tea real quick. It could be kind of neat to meet with other streamers and create a community and then try and do something hardcore where we set our own rules for ourselves. And then within those rules, we have goals. And those goals would be, golding an M3, beating Worm, beating Hive, things like that. So, maybe there's some content for streamers that we could try and create. But I think we'll cross that bridge when we have some more dates set in stone. Let's skip over the PvP maps and game modes just for right now. We do have Barbershop. This looks pretty lame. I don't know. I don't think this should be a, what, don't they actually have this as something here in Season 8? I mean, this literally looks like when you create your character, when you start the game, there's nothing added to it. And on top of that, you need to actually buy. I'm sure they'll give some tokens out, so it could be free to make a few changes, but it looks like you are going to have to buy tokens with real money. So, kind of sucks. I also think that, again, we're just missing opportunities for content here. With the Barbershop, we could be adding, new tattoos, new scars, new hairdos, new skin colors, right? Whatever it is. And maybe those things are actually acquired through either rare content drops, completing certain challenges like, you know, completing Worm, killing 100 corrupted in open world, whatever it is, right? Um, you know, there could be things that we could be adding to this barbershop so that players are actually getting in-game content and then unlocking new rare items. You know, you could even maybe add, what are they called? The schematics or like recipes like we have for cooking. You could unlock really rare open world things that you try and grind for so that you can get this like unique hairdo or a headband, whatever it is, right? But if we're just adding a basic bare bones barbershop just like we had in the beginning of the game, I don't know. Just I can't. That really surprises me. That would even be added as a content factor. Um, the tents can be destroyed by enemies in PvP. Obviously, this is really good for open world stuff. Uh, while I think this is a good change, I find it very hard to praise the devs for this just because this has been asked for since the game has been out. And it's cool that it's been added 3 years later, but it just seems like some weird good idea that they kept in storage and then finally decided to work on randomly. I'm not sure. Either way, it's a good change. This should have been added a long time ago, and I think it's a good feature. On besides that, we do have consumables, and I kind of want to. They don't talk about this. Let me see if there's any links here. Oh no, that's not it. Oh, go to site. Yeah, why not? Let's see what happens here. So I did kind of want to look at the survival potions just because this is where the actual information is. I think a lot of these are really cool. And this is probably the change that I'm most excited about with New World Aeternum. The burst regen potions are going to be neat. Health shot potions, shield potions, grit potions, and lifesteal. I think right now the ones that are the most interesting are grit and shield. You know, obviously for tanks in PvE, grit is really important. Also, a grit potion could be used for like a light con DPS in PvP if they want to play really aggressive at a certain point in time. Shield potion has a lot of potential in PvE as well, especially for low con DPS. So anything that is added like this, right, I think is great. All you're doing is adding depth to the game, and then hopefully we balance these if they're broken or, you know, we see some issues with them or bugs. But great change. I'm excited to see those. That's like when I did my little tier list right here, you know, that was the one thing. I think the new potions are sick. So good change. I'm excited to see those. Besides that, what else did we have? Okay, that's it. Okay, so we also have these new PvP maps and game modes. And unfortunately, it's really hard for me to get excited about these because like all three of these are just previews, right? So if we're talking about a 3-month period, if you get one of these within a 3-month period over a weekend, like is that I don't know. It's amazing. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. It's very surprising that you would actually label like a PTR-esque preview as something that is real content in your season. I think that is just kind of a weird look. I mean, we all know why they're doing it. They don't have any real content in the first place, but either way, I don't really think any of these things we should get excited for because they're just previews. It's like, obviously it's cool that we're testing stuff. We've wanted a lot of new game modes in PvP for a long time. While the new 3v3 arena map does actually look pretty cool, I don't really think people care much for arenas, and we should probably see an overhaul of arenas in the first place. So, like, why is there no rank system? You know, there's no ranked league. Arenas, there's no, like, you know, people just don't really do them. So how do we get people back into doing arenas? We should probably focus on that before we're focusing on creating content for it. And I don't know, we'll just have to see, right? Again, it seems silly to kind of add resources for this thing in particular. Obviously, Capture the Flag is like a really cool preview. The maps do look really great. But again, these are just previews, right? So we might not see these for 6 more months. And maybe you'll see them for a weekend or two within that time frame. So, I mean, if that's enough to get you excited, you know, good for you. But I'd like to see a little bit more here with this content just being pushed out. Like, just fucking push it out, right? We don't need previews. Just run it up. There is no quality assurance. The game is, like, full of bugs. So if these are actually game breaking, then just remove it. But yeah. Bare bones OPR, this doesn't seem very interesting to me. When you talk about like getting rid of damage mitigating perks and also weapon perks, I don't really see a lot of people playing this because it's kind of probably just going to be like heavy players and then like light low con ranged players. I'm not really sure what it'll look like. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's cool that new rotating modes are being created. And maybe, you know, at least like you'll never know if something is good or not unless you actually try it or you develop it and put it out there. So, you know, I'm not super stoked for it or anything. It might be fun to check out. Maybe it creates a small scene within people, or sorry, not within people, but within the community. But either way, let's just, you know, we'll see what it looks like. PvP is definitely getting a little bit of love this patch, and these are all things that I think the community has wanted to see. So, you know, cool, but I'd like to just see more and not have these things only be previews, you know? The only other thing we didn't talk about was target locking. You guys all know how I feel about target locks. I don't think target locking should be in the game in any capacity. If you're a controller player, I think that you should have aim assist, and it's really that simple. So again, target locking is different than aim assist. Target locking is ridiculous. It should not be in the game. It just reduces so much of the skill capacity, makes people like a lot better than they actually are, and just simplifies everything. I think it's broken. Like, let's just have people aim, right? Obviously, yes, controllers should have a little bit of aim assist because this is just a third-party action game, but, you know, target lock is broken. So if it's being nerfed or, you know, cut out of the game, that's great. Give the controller players a little bit of aim assist and they should be happy. Okay, I think we've talked about everything now. The only thing we haven't talked about are the artifacts, I believe. So why don't we just look at those? Oh, there's also a spectator cam. I don't know, I guess it's cool, but... And then there's ready up for PvP, but... Doesn't matter too much, I don't think. So we do have some new artifacts. So what do I think about all these? Let's specifically talk about like PvE aspects. The old crown is interesting because it's very similar to Attuned leather pants, but we don't know the weight class of old crown yet. So is old crown going to be good? I think a lot of it is going to be dependent on its weight class, you know, and we don't know that yet. So we'll just have to wait and see. The tower shield does seem very interesting to me. Obviously for PvP, this sounds very good. But the thing I'm interested the most about is this team armor aura. Because even in PvE, right, if we're fighting harder bosses like Sir Loth, the Troll, Marius, just as a few examples, they have a lot of one-shot attacks. So what if this tower shield, by just equipping it, gave everybody in like a 15-meter radius plus 20% armor rating or something like that? You know, like a fortify. Either way, it seems like it could have unique use cases, sorry, and I'm kind of interested to see how this one will play out. I don't really think this is going to have any value in PvE. I think that a lot of newer players are going to look at the sword and they're going to think that it's good. But I think for like speedrunning or higher end content, I'm not going to see a lot of value in this. There's two main reasons, all right? A, sword and shield isn't used very much in like clumpier parts of expeditions or raid content right now, and the main reason is just because greatsword is so strong as a tank, right? Greatsword is very, very good. So there are some small cases where people will use sword and shield as a main hand, but like without the grit and with the increased stun knockback, and then also just being stuck in like third light attacks now and how long it takes to block after you do an attack animation with the input system, a lot of people just aren't using sword and shield. So now I'm sure you'll say, oh, but like a lot of people use sword and shield on bosses, right? Well, on bosses, we have Power Stone now, and Power Stone for any boss content in the game that I'm talking about, Hive, Expeditions, is literally a free 20% weaken that we would otherwise not be able to acquire with, you know, a good composition at least. So I really don't think that the tank would ever give up an additional 20% weaken just for this sword. But, you know, we're just gonna kind of gonna have to wait and see, right? So I don't think this was gonna be used. I think it's cool, but I don't think it'll be optimal at least. The Blunderbuss seems really fun for PvP, very similar to like Scorpion Sting. So, you know, cool addition. This does not seem very good. I'm not sure why this would be used. Maybe incredibly niche cases, but yeah. Same thing with Lich Gloves. These two right here, right? I think that these will probably never be used, but they might have really niche cases, so. Okay, I think we covered everything. So, the only other thing that I wanted to mention is that you probably saw I have a note down here. So if you guys are like playing New World and you notice that you crash, especially in expeditions or any type of content you load into, you might want to disable DX12. We've done some testing just like within our small ass speedrun community, and DX12 is causing a lot of issues with crashing in instance content. So if you didn't see this here, it looks like Direct 12 is going to be enabled by default on Steam. So if you do not want this, you're going to want to change this. Now, if you have a really updated graphics card or you don't have any issues crashing in instance content, then you're good. Don't worry about this, right? But again, if you're someone like is running into Tarn where we crash a lot, any ad has a lot of DirectX 11 crashing or 12X crashing, sorry. And right now Forge does too. So if you guys are crafting it, oh my gosh, I need the sip of tea. If you guys are crashing, look to disable this. So just go back to DirectX 11 or whatever it's called. I guess to wrap it up, here's kind of what I labeled everything as. I'm not really too excited for this season. There's just not a lot of content, and I will go over kind of what I want to see real quick in a second here. I'm excited for the new potions. The grade mode previews are obviously cool. Let's see what they look like, right? I think any content, especially for PvP, these game modes, we've wanted these for years, so it's awesome it's finally happening. Hardcore server could be cool. You know, nothing crazy here. My official rating is a 4 out of 10 for this season. So, all right, there you go. I'm just gonna look through this to see if I missed anything here. It does not look like it. So the only other thing we're going to talk about real quick right now is in development, and then what I want to see kind of coming out of the game. So they did mention that we're going to have some weapons, or one new weapon specifically. It looks like the weapon will be used with 2 hands. So right now we're thinking dual pistols or dual daggers. We'll see what happens. Besides that, the only thing I'm like super excited about, obviously the attribute saving gear sets. This is a good change. We're going to have new raid and raid difficulties, which is awesome. This expedition mode with extraction seems really cool. I'm excited to see what this is like. Besides that, I do think that Umbral's V2 could make a massive change in kind of how people see the game and like the current meta of gearing up, which would be great. And what I mean by that is in the past, if anyone was here for the M10 days, excuse me, we had Umbrals, and it gave a lot of people a reason to kind of play the game every day. If you wanted to run expeditions, you could sell Umbral shards to people, and anybody that wanted to do PvP or acquire endgame gear basically had to do expeditions. So it really pushed a lot of people into the expedition system, which of course I think is great. I know there's a lot of people that didn't like to actually do expeditions to grind Umbrals, and I do think that there should be a counter to that if people want it. But it should be given at a little bit of a lower rate. Maybe. I'm not 100% sure yet. The best thing I think about Umbrals is it just gave more people a reason to continue playing the game, and I think that those things are good, right? So, the reason why it's really hard for me to get into anything like any type of excitement with the in development is these things could be a year away, they could be 6 months away. AGS kind of has a track record of not delivering on their promises, so you know, I would just say if you go into this with zero expectations so that you can't be disappointed. Is kind of the mindset that we have to have with this company, unfortunately. So a lot of these things do give me some excitement. I would love to see a lot of this, but you know, we'll just have to see what happens further down the road. Okay, so a lot now. Last thing we're going to cover is, I'm sure a lot of people are being like, oh, like maybe you have a negative take on the update. You know, well, what do you want to see in the game? So I'm here to answer that question for you. And this is going to be kind of with, you know, obviously, like my take on the game is I'm into PvE. I like speedrunning. I like taking content seriously. But in the past, obviously, I did war. Yeah. Anyways, let's keep moving on. So as far as content goes, I would love to see like new zones. Give us a reason to explore those zones, right? I think we're losing a lot of the current reason for people to explore in this game, and I really want that to come back into the game. Obviously, if people remember the Brimstone Sands update, man, like actually the best update of New World. It was phenomenal just to see everybody running around doing questing. Like, if we could just get stuff like that, even if it was once every 6 months, once a year, like, the game would actually be popping off, like 10xing the player count. So, you know, just keep adding content, please. You know, I know we're not getting a lot of it, but yeah. I'd love to see new expeditions. I'd love to see more raids, and I'd love to see increased difficulty levels. One of the big things I've said a ton on stream is I would love for the solo soul trials to have A, meaningful rewards, and then B, a difficulty system with actual ranking. Like, the solo soul trials, man, have the potential to be something massive in this game. Like, if we actually had a ranking system and we had legitimate rewards, like, can you imagine, like, community of people that are actually invested in min-maxing, like, solo soul trials? And the thing is, it's such a low bar for entry. Anybody can do it. And it's such a, like, small time commitment. You would only do it for, you know, 1 kill, 2 kills, 3 kills. Obviously, we might want a little bit of replayability if something like this is added. But the point being is that just, like, anybody could do this, and it would be sick as fuck to see this type of thing in the game. I would love it. When they announced solo soul trials, I was incredibly excited. And then obviously we got what we got, and they just suck. So much potential for these. I would love to see something done with this. I'd love to see more weapons. You know, we haven't had a new weapon since the fucking flail, which was when? Over a year ago? Like, again, add content, right? We did get some new weapon and armor perks recently. I think it would be cool if we had, like, things adjusted, maybe added, just small things to change the meta, you know? Little things like that. And then obviously I would love to see a combat log. You know, I know there's always been a massive discussion around this, but when I say combat log, you know, I don't just want to see, like, damage at the end of a fight. I would love to see if we could, like, look at a boss and we can see, you know, what rend was at a very specific time in the fight, every second or so, right? What the weaken was at, you know? What was he affected by? When was he hit by skewer? It'd be really cool if we could just see everything that is interacting. And I don't think this will ever happen just because I think it's too much for the developing team. I don't think they can implement it correctly, but, like, I would love to see something like this. I think it would be really good for people to understand the game more in depth. All right, what do I want to see fixed with the current game? Well, right now, input queuing is way too long. Everyone has, like, the meme of when you light attack, you know, you can't get out of the animation you're in. And I don't like that when you press something, sometimes it takes half a second and then that input will actually be actionable on your screen. Yeah, it's very weird to me. The game used to be at such, like, a faster pace, and now it's just, it's been slowed down and the combat has been dumbed down so many times. You know, we don't really know if this is intentional or not, which kind of sucks, but I'd love to see that changed. Attack animations also take too long to cancel. Obviously, we always meme about people, like, dying to third light attack, but to be honest, it sucks. Sometimes if you're stuck in a light attack animation, and then with the input queue taking so long to actually perform, you know, you could do a light attack input, and then it takes, you know, 0.3 of a second to actually be on your screen. And then when you start that animation, if you're in a specific light attack animation, you can't cancel out of it. So now you're just like dead. And sometimes it actually feels like it doesn't matter if you react, it doesn't matter what you do. You're just stuck in an animation and you can't react out of it. And I think that's frustrating. Because again, this is something new that we kind of saw within Season 6 or later on in Season 5. And it's just, people want to play the game fast, you know? We don't want to play the game slow. It's not a survival game. I'd love to see the stagger debuff on elites removed. And this is kind of specifically for PvE expeditions and whatnot. I'm sure a lot of people have seen that this new stagger thing came about. I would also love a comment from the developers on if... So we know that staggers, right, is just a mob being staggered on literally any attack. Now, it's fine if there's a debuff, like a debuff on them for that with the timer where they can't be staggered. But on top of this, they can't be stunned or knocked down now either. So it's just kind of weird because it just creates so many inconsistencies, especially when fighting them at a higher level. And I don't think we know for certain if they're not supposed to be knocked down or stunned or have that immunity. Like, was that supposed to be added with the stagger thing? It's never been communicated, but I just think it really lowers the skill cap. And I'm not a fan of it. I'd like to just see that gone. Improve rewards in M3 is obviously self-explanatory. Give us better gear. Get people back into running some of the best content in the game. I want to see nameplates fixed in PvE content. If you know, you know, type of a thing. But I mean, if we could just go over to my YouTube and I'll just pull up a Depths VOD, right? Like, let me just find when we ran Depths. I think this is probably going to be a pretty good example here. But, you know, if we're, like, fighting Thorpe, I mean, like, look at this shit, bro. Look at the nameplates and, like, look at the boss. You literally can't see anything. And there are so many fights in the game that are like this now. Like, I want to be able to see what the boss is doing, right? Like, can we just get rid of the nameplates? Can we make them smaller back to how they were in Season 5? You know, this change happened, and I think it was for console players. They increased nameplate size and location so that they could see them better sitting back from their fucking couch. That's a dig. That's a dig. My bad, though. My bad. But in all seriousness, it's just ridiculous. Like, you can't see what's happening on your screen. And this, like, we need to be able to adjust this. Obviously, the other thing that I have is I'm pretty sure on here I have damage numbers improved on screen. If I have floating damage numbers turned off, I don't want my damage numbers up here. I want them somewhere over here so I can see everything. I'm basically unable to see, like, 75% of the damage I'm doing. And it sucks because, you know, I want to see what type of damage I'm doing. Also, if you take damage, you can't see what type of damage you have with the floating numbers turned off, which really sucks, so you don't even know what you die to. And then when you have floating damage numbers turned on, it's very similar to nameplates, right? Where you're basically just blocking visibility on your screen. So that, for that reason, I never have them on. And I would love to see some of this stuff fixed, right? Just small quality of life issues that would greatly improve the experience when playing the game. Okay, so the last thing that I would love to see for the game, and something that scares me, but also I really want to be improved, is, you know, I'll just read this out real quick, okay? Right now, the leveling process is the easiest it's ever been. Cool. You know, I think that's fine to a certain extent. But there are many meaningful aspects of Aeternum filled with content, and as the game has been continued developed, many aspects of the game are forgotten about and left behind. You know, there's so many things that you could look at in this regard. Either if it's like riding, questing, gathering, fishing, expeditions, raids. There are so many things that just don't reward players in the current endgame cycle. And it seems like things are being added into the game like a year or two ago at any point, and then they're just kind of forgotten about. And we never come back to them. And there's so much room for improvement with existing content that would just add to the synergy of the game and give people a little bit more of a reason to explore, in my own opinion. Many open world elites, raids, and expeditions drop useless gear. Yep, early and mid game feels non-existent, has no replayability, and added content always under-delivers on what is possible. Yes, I agree with this. You know, well, I wrote it, so of course I agree with it. But just as an example, right, is when we added riding into the game, which obviously riding was really cool. You know, there wasn't any like replayability. Like there was all these races adding with riding. I'm sure you guys saw this when you were like leveling up your riding skills, doing the early quests. Like, why is there not like a leaderboard for timing on racing? You know, why are we not adding little things? Like, there's just so many small things that could be added to get people to like into the content. And it's just, I don't know, missed opportunities, right? So that's just one example. Obviously there's a ton more, but yeah. And then I think the only other thing that I would mention is, right, is like, I think the end game is currently in probably the worst spot it's ever been, just because we only have like the total end game cycle is basically OPR, Wars, Hive, and Worm. And then anything outside of that is literally personal entertainment, but it doesn't offer any progression. The only other thing that I probably mentioned here is obviously you can like farm gold, right? So if you're into farming, you know, if you were looking for certain items that you could sell, there's a ton of different ways that you could acquire gold so that you can basically improve what you have. And that's kind of the fifth end game option for the cycle. So it just seems like there's not a ton to do right now, and a lot of other time sinks end up being worthless if you're not getting actual enjoyment out of them. But there's a lot of reason why it's hard to get enjoyment out of them, you know, and bugs and quality of life issues factor a lot into that, and lack of rewards, of course, right? So again, you know, I'd love to see more things added to this list, just because OPR, Wars, Hive, and Worm is probably not the best endgame cycle, and we've definitely had others. But yeah, I think that kind of wraps it up. So if you guys agreed with things I said, if you guys disagree with anything I said, feel free to bring it up in the comments. I'm definitely down to discuss and kind of hear what you guys think. Obviously, the player base matters. The small community that we've built here matters, and I want to hear your guys' opinion, and just let me know. So, all right, I'll see you guys all in the next video. Be late.